I've been asked a fairly sophisticated question about metaphysics and God, and it has to do with the nature of abstract objects, things like numbers and sets and relations, laws of logic, that kind of thing. And the question is, are these things created by God, or are they co-eternal with God? Are they objects that exist co-eternal with Him? And it seems like each point of view has its problems. Let me say this. First of all, we're talking about abstract objects here. And what abstract objects are immaterial things that are causally inert. That is, they don't do anything. So the laws of logic doesn't interact in some way, or numbers don't interact. They're not agents that cause other things to happen. They're not part of causal chains. But they seem to be real things in some fashion. And so what is the status of these? Did God create these things? And if God created these objects, then maybe they didn't exist. The laws of logic didn't exist before God made them. And if God made all things, and these are things, that God must have made them. On the other hand, how can you have laws of logic being created things as if they're just something arbitrary that were made, and they don't necessarily govern things in the universe, or maybe even govern God's own nature? Because if they don't govern God's own nature, then it's hard to know what we can depend on regarding God. So anyway, these are some of the questions, and there's a couple of strategies to answer this challenge. One of them is just to say that abstract objects are not objects at all. They don't exist. They're not real. They're ways of talking about things, but they're just that's all they are. They're not real things. Now, a person who holds that abstract objects are not real is called a nominalist, and William Lane Craig might be an example of someone like that. So they avoid the problem by saying that these things don't really represent something real. A realist, on the other hand, that is someone who believes these things are real, might be called a Platonist, that there is something called numbers that are in some kind of metaphysical realm, or laws of logic and the like, then does face this problem. What is their status? Here's a way that I think is most reasonable, at least at this point in time, to explain these things. I ground the notion of singularity and multiplicity or plurality, the one and the many, what are called the laws of logic, and things like that, numbers and all of that. I ground that in the character of God, or maybe a better way of putting it is in the being of God. That is, God is a certain way in Himself. There are things that are characteristic of God, and if God's being is the foundation of all reality and has always been, then things like singularity and plurality, the one and the many, the one God and the three persons, for example, are eternal characteristics of the being of God. They aren't created objects. They are characterized by God. In the same way, the laws of logic aren't laws in the sense that people normally think of laws that are something that is established by somebody and exist in virtue of the authority of that person. Moral laws would be like that. But rather, these are ways of understanding the essence or the being of God, not even the character of God. If you think of character like love and justice and virtues and things like that, or omniscience and these are part of God's being. So the law of identity, a thing is itself and not something else, is simply a proposition that we use to describe a feature of reality, which feature of reality is grounded in God's being. So simply put, you might answer these challenges by saying, well, these things don't exist. Or you could say that they were created by God, or maybe not created by God, but were eternal objects, and all of these things seem to me to be problematic. Or else you could just simply say, these are genuine features of the universe that are grounded in foundational reality, which is essentially the being of God, because that is reality that has existed for eternity. And then everything else that is created follows that form in some fashion. And in that sense, it seems to me you can have your cake and eat it too, metaphysically speaking.